So if you keep having the same fight with your partner or your spouse, it's not because you love the drama, you love to fight. It's not because you're not meant to be together or that you're necessarily incompatible. It's usually because you're missing what the fight is really about. If you continue to fight about the same thing without resolution, it's because there's something deeper at stake that hasn't been resolved. So today I want to share with you what I think are the 4 main reasons that this happens, where you keep fighting over the same thing and you just can't find resolution. And then 10 powerful questions that you can ask to break out of that, to really get at the heart of the matter so that you can stop having what I call surface fights and get closer through the conflict. If you have had the same fight on repeat, you probably already suspect or know it's not really about the thing that we're fighting about. If it seems like you're fighting about money, it's probably not about money. It's probably about what your priorities are, what you value more, what you think you should be spending your resources on, how you want to live. If you're fighting about the dishes, it's not about the dishes, right? It's about feeling considered. It's about equity, a distribution of labor. It's about feeling heard or wanting to know that you're appreciated. So if you keep finding yourself in gridlock and you keep having this surface fight, there's usually 4 things that get in the way. So if you can get to the root of it and identify what it really is, then you'll be able to break up that surface fight and speak to the real issue and actually resolve it. Number 1, and I think what most couples don't realize, is that they have the same fight over and over again because they're emotionally disconnected. So they're fighting as a protest against the disconnection. Fighting is a protest behavior when people feel like their partner's not attuned to them, they feel alone, they feel like their partner doesn't have their back. And so your brain starts to look for evidence to support your fears. If you feel like they're judging you or underappreciating you and you're in that state of disconnect, you don't feel safe, you don't really see them as your ally. And this is unconscious largely. So the conversations that you have when you are arguing, they become much more adversarial because in your mind, they're not on your team, right? So you're coming in with that energy that's not going to feel productive. It's going to feel charged up and it's going to result in conflict. It escalates things. Also, if you feel unsafe, one of the things that's connected to the source of this is you could be dealing with attachment triggers. This could be a mismatched attachment style. It could activate core wounds or unmet needs from childhood that are not even about the topic at hand. And when these old wounds are driving the disconnect, the stakes feel really, really high. That ramps up the conflict and the escalation is disproportionate to what the thing is about. So when you have a disproportionate reaction around the same fight, that's often what it is. Number 2, and this is something I see all the time, is that couples keep having the same fight because they don't have the conflict resolution skills. They just don't know how to resolve it. It's really a skills issue. It's not even about safety or anything else. But how this shows up is if one of you is shutting down or avoiding or moving into stonewalling, if one of you is blaming or criticizing, or one or both of you is resorting to these losing strategies, if you're getting defensive all the time, every time you're trying to resolve something, if you move into escalation and yelling, if you're in this pattern of you're constantly trying to convince them of your position, they're trying to convince you of their position, and you're not asking the productive question, which is like, how can we find a solution that works for both of us? You're just stuck in that gridlock of trying to win. There's a winner and there's a loser. That would be an example of a skill problem. And another example would be a lack of repair, not knowing how to repair. So what happens is that you have a fight, you decide you don't want to fight anymore, but you never really repaired. So the emotional wounds start to compound, and then over time, your relationship loses resilience. The third thing, and the reason why you keep having the same fight over and over again, is because you're making assumptions or you're having misunderstandings and you don't even realize that that's what's happening. You assume you're on the same page about something, but you're really not. And so you're taking offense and you're giving it different meaning. So for example, your spouse might be countering you as a way of debating you to find a solution. Like in their mind, they're debating because that's how we can duke it out and get to the solution to arrive at some kind of objective truth. They think it's a friendly spar. They think that, their intention is to find a solution, but you feel like they're contrary. You take it as they're being aggressive and argumentative and uncooperative, right? And that doesn't feel good. So now you're offended and you're not going to come to it with goodwill. Another example would be assuming that your partner knows what you want or what's upset you, like mind reading, or assuming they should know what you need to feel better, even though you haven't been clear about that, because for you, it would be obvious. So an example would be, let's say they are trying to apologize to you and they think that that is going to help you, but what you really need is a commitment or an agreement to make a change going forward. So they apologize and they think that they've repaired, and you take that as they're not willing to repair, they're not willing to give me what it is that I need, and so you're hanging on to resentment and they don't understand why. They might also be trying to problem solve when you bring something up, when all you're really looking for is empathy and understanding. And so you feel like they haven't been there for you. And in their mind, they really are there for you because they're trying to help in the way that they know how. You might also make negative meaning about their intentions that are just wrong. Like something that was careless is now taken as you don't care about me, right? So we assign ill intentions or give meaning to something, and it's a misunderstanding, and that is going to cause a lot of conflict. When that's not addressed, that will keep happening on repeat because that perception and that misunderstanding or that assumption that you're making is just going to stay stuck because you've never actually resolved it. The third thing is power struggles are the biggest source of recurring arguments. When there's not shared power in a relationship, there's going to be some kind of argument, right? If there's not shared power or at least a shared understanding of who wields power, who has the power to make certain decisions at certain times, because some couples, it's not 50-50 for everything, right? One partner might take the lead on some things and the other partner takes the lead on other things, but there has to be a shared understanding. If you don't agree on that and you're both trying to vie for power over the same thing, then that can cause a struggle, obviously. And so then it becomes not about the thing that you're fighting for. It becomes about winning. It becomes about, I want to have influence over my partner and I'm frustrated that they're not receiving my influence. It becomes about they're not hearing me. And that becomes more important than the thing that you're actually discussing. It could be that you feel insecure, so you're trying to defend against that. And that's why you feel like you need to win or one up them. It could be because you feel unsafe or your partner feels unsafe unless they're in control of the situation. But whatever the reason is, power struggles cloud what the real issue is. And if we don't call it out, they're going to rule you, right? Those power struggles and the need for that sense of control and power is taking over, and you're not even really fully honest with yourself or your partner about that that's what it is. It looks like it's about the thing, but it's not really about that. And so if that's happening, you're going to struggle with being able to give in or compromise or let something go when you really could, right? Because that's not what it's for you. And then that's going to create long-term resentment too, just like the emotional disconnection and the lack of repair. So what do you do about it? What do we do if we're on this roller coaster of fighting and then not fighting, but never really resolving it and then having it again the next day or the next week? There are 10 questions that I think are really powerful that you can ask yourself to help you break out of the cycle and stop repeating the same fight. Number one, if you're stuck in the same argument on repeat, try asking the question, what is at stake behind this argument? What is really at stake for me? And further questions to answer that would be, what does this mean to me? Is this about respect for me? Is this about autonomy? Is this about validation? Is this about, I want to be able to influence them and they're, I can't get through? What does it mean to you? What is really at stake for you? If it's a money dispute, is it about your life dreams? You really, really want to travel. And so your life dream is at stake. It's not necessarily always an emotional component. It could be something that is related to your life dream. So you really want to get clear on what that is for you. And then share that with your partner. Number two, and this question I think can shift conflict faster than pretty much any other technique that I know of, which is to say, what story am I telling myself? What meaning am I giving this right now? You've heard me say this before if you've been on my live streams. Check assumptions like they don't care about me or here we go again or I'm not the priority. I think sometimes we project the past onto the present moment. And if you can really ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself about this situation? You might understand and get some clarity around if you're projecting or not. Our brain sometimes can't tell the difference between something that's happening in the present moment and what the stakes are for that and what happened in the past that what's happening now reminds you of. Sometimes your brain confuses it. So if you can ask yourself, what is the meaning I give that? Then you have the opportunity to recognize maybe that's not true and maybe there's a different meaning I can give this. The third thing is, and most couples never think to ask this when they're fighting, but I think this is a really big game changer, is to say, what do I really need in this moment? Or what do you really need in this moment to repair? If we want to get out of this fight, if we want to just put an end to this because we can see we're going down the same road again, what do you need? What do we need to get out of this? What am I looking for? Am I looking for reassurance? Am I looking for respect? Am I looking for understanding? Am I looking for clarity? Am I looking for compassion? Am I looking for an agreement to problem solve together, to come to the table and get their input on something? Be really clear on what that is. And it might be a longer term thing, but for the moment, if you find that you're going down the path of a recurring fight that's not productive, this is a massive pattern interrupt to stop and ask that question. Also, number 4, when you're in the heat of an argument, ask yourself the question, have I clearly communicated what I need? You might think you were clear and you weren't. Have I expected them to read my mind? Do I think it's obvious? And maybe it's not. So you want to ask them to share, what they think you're asking for to find out if there is a misunderstanding or if you weren't really clear. What do they think you are asking for? What do they think is being called for if they are trying? And if you can see that they're missing the mark, then you can correct that and say, here's what it really need. Here's what I haven't really fully expressed. Here's the missing piece. Here's the nuance. And not just what you want, but what does it specifically look like, right? So we could say, I just want peace. Or I just want understanding. But what does that actually mean? Like peace could be specifically, I would like to have an entire week of harmony with you and no conflict at all. Or peace could be, I'd like to have more laughter and more lighthearted moments and, fun with the family where we're not talking about difficult or serious things. You have to be really specific. Because if you're saying, I want emotional connection, or I want more love and attention, I want you to be present, what would that look like if that was achieved? Sometimes we have to spell that out because they might think they're already doing it, and that's where we come to the misunderstandings again. Number 5, conflict does not end with convincing. It ends with curiosity. So you really always want to ask the question, how am I contributing to this pattern? What part am I playing in this dynamic? Where do I step in and do the same thing every single time we have this fight? That's where you have all the power, right? Did my body language or tone factor into this fight? Have I done things in the past that could inform their perception of me? If I think they're misunderstanding me, if I think they're overreacting, could I understand from their perspective based on the past? Where could I have done things better to keep things from escalating? It's tempting, I think, to think that our bad behavior is always justified because of their bad behavior. Like, well, I only did that or said that because you did this or said that. But that's not owning our part, and therefore we're giving our power away, and that's not helpful. And the only place that we can actually stop it is on our side of the street. So we always have a choice. You have a choice to own it. It gives you power. And when you do that, when you really own it and come forward and say, look, here's the part I played. I want to own that. That helps your spouse put down their armor and come forward with what they can own, or at least just soften and hear you and move out of that fighting mode. Number 6 is if you want to stop fighting and you want to really start reconnecting, you ask, what is my intention going into this conversation? Is my intention to connect? Is my intention to truly be heard? Or is my intention for me to hear them? Am I trying to defend myself? Am I trying to be right? Am I trying to show them how they're wrong? Without judgment, right? Because a lot of times when we really ask that question, we find out that our intentions are not as pure as we think they are or as we would like them to be. But if we can look at that without judgment and recognize our intentions are going to guide us in the conversation, they're going to keep us on track so we don't get derailed. Because if we don't know what our intention is, whatever comes in front of us, we're just going to react to. But if we know what our intention is and something comes across our path in the conversation that does not support that, we just can go around it. It's not part of what we're here for. It just helps us stay connected to the purpose and not just be super reactive in every single thing that happens in that argument, especially when it's 0 to 90 and both of you are escalated. So number 7 is, and I believe this one question can turn any fight into a moment of connection. And that is, am I truly listening or am I just listening to answer? Am I just waiting for them to be done talking so that I can make the point I want to make? Am I already thinking about what I'm going to say? And so I'm not even hearing what they're saying. How often does this happen? This happens all the time when we're not really listening. Most fights escalate because we can feel when they're not listening. We get more intense because they're not hearing us. We can tell that they're just waiting to start talking again. So try really listening for your part. Try listening. What are they saying from their side? Really try to hear it, knowing you're not really losing anything at all if you just listen. Whatever it is that you want to say, you can still say later. If you're afraid you're going to forget and that's why you're blurting it out, then just take one thing at a time and ask your partner, we'll just take one thing at a time. And then you can literally write it down as like a thing to follow up on later so that you can stay focused. But I think that also when you do that, when you show up with true listening and they can see it in your eyes that you're really listening and you're taking in what they're saying, it's magical in the way that it de-escalates. It will calm them down and it will calm you down and it will support them in doing the same for you. So make sure you're really listening and also ask your partner to slow down and really listen to what you have to say too. And if they're feeling like they can't do that because it's rapid fire and you're bringing in a laundry list, then you really have to slow it down. And like I said, take one thing at a time. Number 8 is, before you say one more word in an argument that's really familiar, are we both regulated right now? Are we calm enough to even be having this conversation? I think most people think that they're fine when they're actually too escalated. Their heart rate is too high for them to be successful in the conversation, even though they really think that they should be able to have that conversation because they're hooked in and they don't want to set it aside. You should be waiting at least 20 minutes if you get a little bit escalated to make sure your heart rate comes down, probably even an hour. but you can actually measure your heart rate. You can know what your resting heart rate is, and you can measure it when you're escalated to find out if it is at resting. And if it's not, if it's considered an escalated heart rate compared to what your baseline is, then you don't have the conversation. And you have to look at this as it's like a timeout, right? You're looking at it as a way to protect your relationship. It's a way to set you up for success later on when you have the conversation. It's a pattern interrupt so you don't spend all this time and energy just hurting each other more, getting more and more frustrated. You stop it and you know that you're going to talk about it later. And the difference between a responsible timeout and just stonewalling and like shutting down is that you have a time that you're going to return. With a proper timeout, you're going to say, I'll be back in 2 hours and we'll try it again. And then if you come back in 2 hours and one of you is still not ready, that's okay. Then come up with another time. But the idea is that you have something to look forward to. You're not just bailing and then you're left hanging for days at a time, not knowing if you're going to come around and actually resolve it. So if you're curious about timeouts and it's something that you've tried to do and it hasn't worked for you, check out Terry Real's 10 Commandments of a Timeout. You can look that up online and there's like PDFs that you can download. It's really good. Number 9, if you want to get out of gridlock with your partner, you want to really ask, what is the pattern that we're stuck in? What dance are we doing again? Are we doing this thing where I criticize and you shut down? Are we doing this thing where we both avoid and we're just, neither of us is bringing it up and we're kind of like hoping the other person doesn't bring it up, but it's just under the surface until the next time? What would it look like to interrupt this pattern? Now you're asking a question that pivots you to get on the same side of the table, shoulder to shoulder, to look at yourselves and say, okay, this is what we're doing again. It's not me versus you, it's us against the pattern. And that is teamwork. Finally, the 10th question that you can ask yourself, and I really think that couples who heal their connections and break out of this pattern of recurring fights, they ask themselves this question: what does repair look like? What they might think it's going to take is different than what I might think it's going to take. But there's no reason why we both can't try to give each other what we need. So this is if you're at a point where you're like, I don't know when the conflict, I don't know how to get out of this conflict. I really want this conversation to stop. It feels like it's going nowhere. We're going in circles. We're not hearing each other. How can I make this stop? A very powerful question is just to say, I don't want to fight. What do you need from me right now? What are you trying to get from this conversation so that I can try to give it to you and we can move out of it? But it could be validation. It could be a do-over. It could be, I need time to reflect. It could be, I just want you to understand how this impacted me. And that's it. It's usually not the conflict and the thing itself. It's the lack of repair and the inability to be able to come together and say, we choose to repair. We choose to hear what the other person needs and just stop fighting. I know that sounds really simple and maybe a little bit overly simplified in the sense that if it was that easy, you would have done it by now. Usually there is secondary gain to the fight because there is something that we are trying to get behind the fight. But if you do all of these and you really get good at listening and you really understand what the pattern is and you understand what you're looking for in the conversation and what your ultimate goal really is, this part is not going to be that hard, right? You're going to have that self-awareness and you're not going to go down that road anymore. It's impossible. If you do all of these 10 things, it's impossible for you to continue having the same old fight without resolution. That's it for today. If you like my content, please take a second and either like this video or subscribe to my channel or both. That will help us reach the people that really need to hear this stuff.